our mission at Greenlight Guru is to improve the quality of life, likely a mission that's similar to a lot of you here today. And our goal is to help you today in networking and learning through the MedTech. I'm still waiting for my next slide. I'm sorry. I apologize. Thank you. Our mission here at Greenlight Guru is to improve the quality of life. A lot of people don't realize that we're more than just software and we're more than just content. Our goal is to actually create an ecosystem, a network for you to be able to build a community in MedTech, to build an industry community, to have a partner ecosystem. If you need anything, let us know. We probably know somebody who does that. But we also have software. So our software is purpose-built for MedTech. One of the things about our software that helps companies is the fact that it's pre-validated. So if you're not familiar with that, talk to us about that as well. Validation can take quite a bit of effort, but we try to take that effort out. On top of that, we're not only an EQMS, a lot of people are not familiar with our product development side either. So we have a projects module that can help with your design controls, your risk management to ensure that traceability. So I started as a project manager. I had my PMP and worked as a drug delivery combination product project manager. And I managed the DHF, the design controls, the risk management, and connecting those was a pain. When I found Greenlight Guru, I felt like I needed to change careers to let people know about this software. It's pretty incredible if you've never used it. We also have a clinical electronic data capture system, EDC. So Smart Trial, if you're not familiar with it, you need to definitely reach out to Johan Bergsteinson, the founder, on LinkedIn. Talk to him, follow him. He will talk to you about clinical investigations until your ears fall off. But he's there to help you with your clinical investigations as well. And on top of all of our software, we also have an academy where you can go to learn all about design controls. If you don't know what I just said, if you're trying to struggle with DFMEA to ISO 14971 2019, we can help you with that. The academy has a lot of free content that can help you learn MedTech. All right. We have over 1,000 customers, over 1,000 people or companies have trusted us with their EQMS software, and we're excited to be able to partner with you if you're interested. So feel free to use this, learn from us. If you have questions about the software, there's lots of people who have already asked me different questions about the software. I can point you to other customers who have additional questions. You can talk to them as well and work together. Now, I'd like to turn the mic over to Ben Trombold, the VP of Sales and Marketing for Valentium, one of our presenting sponsors. All right.
All right, thank you, Etienne. Before we get started, I just wanted to thank Greenlight Guru for putting on this event. It's never easy to do that. We're very proud to be a presenting sponsor here. So just wanted to give a quick round of applause to Kennedy, Etienne, and their team for putting on such a great event, allowing us to be here today. Thank you, guys. So I just wanted to talk for a couple minutes to introduce Valentium to all of you. Some of you may know us, some of you may not. But we are a medical device engineering consulting firm specializing in the design, development, and manufacturing of active medical devices, specifically therapeutic and diagnostic devices. We have significant expertise in deep brain stimulation, neuromodulation, cardiac and diabetes, and we can also work with customers who have varying form factors going all the way from active implantable medical devices, TENS devices, PENS devices, as well as wearables. We have over 100 engineers on staff that are ready to take your device through all various stages of the medical device life cycle, depending on where you're starting from, where you're endpoints. So that includes research and feasibility, V&V testing, animal studies, minimum viable prototypes, proof of concept devices, transfer to manufacturing as well as manufacturing. So we can do a full design of your entire project. We can either be integrated pieces of a larger team, or we can take over the entire project. We can do that with 9 different areas of engineering. This goes from electrical development,
is good, but it's also
firmware development, mechanical development, industrial design, and closure development. We can also do cybersecurity, HFE, usability, transfer to manufacturing, automated test systems, and then we have system engineering to be able to tie all of that together. We market ourselves as a one-stop shop for R&D and manufacturing, and we have a wide variety of customers, ranging all the way from one-person startups to 100 and 200-person companies trying to develop their second-gen device, as well as Fortune 50 companies that are just looking for some staff augmentation and everything in between. And so For the rest of this year, we've got a couple pretty big announcements that I want to make known to you guys. So first of all, we are actively selling a new IPG platform that can be customized for various needs on basic customers. So we're talking, out of the box, ready to go in a handful of weeks if you're looking for a speed to market, if that's something you're looking for, or a fully customizable solution for those of you maybe who are looking for something a little bit more advanced and everything in between there. We're also actively developing 50,000 square feet of manufacturing design space here in Houston. We are based here. The majority of our employees are here, and that will be fully operational by the end of the year as well. And then finally, for those of you that may not know, there's going to be a lot of new cybersecurity regulations rolling out from the FDA by the end of this month. And so by May 1st, our Director of Product Security has been working hard to develop and release a out-of-the-box ready to purchase cybersecurity training program that can be self-paced for both individuals as well as corporate groups. So again, my name's Ben. I've got Kyle Kemp on our sales team. Our CEO Dan Burris is here. If you guys have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them. And so with that, I will hand it back to Etienne.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben. Before I present our gold sponsor, I wanted to ask, I'm just curious. I haven't been to Houston for a long time. How many people are here, native Houston people? Just give me a show of hands. Maybe I should ask, who's not from Houston? And what's the furthest? I know somebody came from Louisiana. Anybody here further than Louisiana?
California.
California. Okay. All right, Gary always shows everybody up wherever he goes. Awesome. If you don't know Gary, I'm gonna flood his email inbox later. All right, thank you so much for coming. I'm now gonna turn the stage over to Kyle Rose, founder and president of Rook Quality Systems.
Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm Kyle Rose, I'm president of Rook Quality Systems. I want to thanks again to Greenlight and Valentium for hosting this event. We are very excited to be here in Houston. We've had a long history of working with the TMCX program, going back to the very first demo day, and have been advisors and mentors here in Houston going forward, and have quite a few clients in the Houston area. Rook Quality is a medical device consulting firm that works with all types of medical devices, and we help really solve the issue if you don't have your own quality or regulatory internal experts. We bring our team of 30+ consultants in to help you navigate the regulations, get your design file, your risk file in place, and move your product through the market and get FDA clearance. A lot of people always ask, are you competitors with Greenlight? And it's quite the opposite. We're actually close partners with Greenlight and work very closely with them to be kind of the expert that's working within your Greenlight system and providing all those records, the doc control, the training, the design files that you need as you develop your device. We manage over 50 Greenlight accounts for our clients, and that includes all types of medical devices. So everything from SAMD products, mechanical devices, diagnostics. We support all different types of medical devices. We have a few of our consultants here today that would also love to meet with anybody that's looking for quality and regulatory support. Like I said, we currently have around 30 consultants, the majority in the US. We also have a branch in Taiwan that supports all of our Asian-based clients, and we're opening a branch in Europe later this month as well. So if you are looking to go international and sell your devices anywhere in the world, we have clients all over the world, as well as consultants that can help you get your product around the market. So looking forward to meeting everyone here. We already know quite a few people, but also looking forward to meeting some new faces. Definitely feel free to reach out if you have any questions about quality or regulatory needs for your medical device.
Okay, now the time we've all been waiting for, our panel discussion, understanding the opportunities, challenges, and things that we can do to improve in 2023 for MedTech. I'd like to invite to the stage Joanna Nathan, co-founder and CEO of Prana Thoracic. Alex Arevalos, CEO of Starling Medical.
I've known her for a while. I just didn't know what a new company does.
He told me he would forgive me my Oklahoma pronunciation of his last name, so thank you. And also Kyle Rose from Rook Quality Systems. So we're going to be talking about headwinds, opportunities, challenges for 2023. But before we get into that, why don't we talk a little bit about your background, maybe your starting story. We can start with you, Joanna.
Sure.
Let me get you all lined.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Hi, so my name is Joanna Nathan. I am originally a bioengineer by training. I got my degrees just down the street at Rice. I started out actually working with this guy, one of my first jobs, in early stage MedTech. And briefly kind of went from there, a little more onto the investor side with roles at Mercury Fund and the Johnson & Johnson Center for Device Innovation, and then landed back in the entrepreneur's seat again, just about this time last year. So we are, Soprana is a surgical oncology company. We have a device that can minimally invasively remove early stage lung nodules.
It's nice to see everybody. My name is Arevalos. So I've actually founded 3 medtech startups somehow already. So first one we did on the side of my PhD at Rice called Seranus. The second one was a spin out of the TMC Biodesign Innovation Fellowship. And the third one that I'm currently the CEO is called Starling Medical, where we're an at-home urinary diagnostic remote patient monitoring platform that allows us to passively tell if you're trending toward an exacerbation, one of your chronic conditions, so we can flag it, get you access to care, and keep you out of the hospital.
Sounds good. And like I said a minute ago, I'm Kyle Rose, president of Rook Quality. My background originally in chemistry, and I went into industry working for a few different medical device companies, originally a diagnostic and then a high volume contact lens. While working at these companies, I saw quite a few inefficiencies with quality systems and thought there might be an idea to do some consulting, help smaller companies with their quality and regulatory path, and that's how I started Rook.
That's great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate all of the... Can you hear me in the back? Is it good? Okay. Really appreciate all the experience shown on this stage. So we're in Houston. A lot of the people here in the audience are based in Houston. I know you two are as well. What are some of the things about just this region that can be really beneficial for everybody to understand and know about the ecosystem? What are the things you appreciate and understand and would like to share with the audience? And we can start with you, Joy.
Yeah, sure. So I am not a native Houstonian. I might have come from the farthest away originally, I guess. I grew up in Abu Dhabi. I'm an immigrant. I moved here for school, and I think this city, and I think the community here, the word to define it is momentum. I think there's a lot of forward movement, especially in the device space, but if you look at life sciences in general, and I think, I've gotten to see just over the last decade how quickly that the ecosystem has progressed. Although there were people, before me that also saw it progress for the decades before that. So I think one of the biggest values of being here versus anywhere else is you get to be part of building that. And that's not true in a more saturated ecosystem or more established ecosystem. That's been my favorite part of being in Houston is getting to be part of building and defining what we look like as an industry here, as well as getting to take advantage of all of the great, amazing talent coming out of the Med Center and converting them over from academia to the pseudo-dark side, I guess. So, yeah.
Yeah, so last year we went through the Y Combinator Accelerator, which is the world's most famous accelerator. So a lot of our investors are like straight up tech CEOs or tech investors. And I've talked with a lot of people about, what's it like to build a company in that ecosystem. And we've even thought about, like, should we leave Houston? Should we go to groups like that, where, ecosystems like that? And what a lot of people have told me is there's a lot of benefit to not necessarily being in that pressure cooker constantly, because it can force you to make bad decisions that are not good for patients or not good for the business as a whole in this hyper growth mindset that everyone has over there. So the nice thing about Houston is that you can set your own pace and you're not necessarily as directly influenced by all that outside pressure. Now, we still work our butts off, but it's all internally driven, but instead of some outside, like, nebulous force that you feel. And so that's sort of the nice thing about being in Houston is you can build something great, but you don't have to necessarily do it because of someone else's perception of what you should be doing.
Yeah, and from my perspective, I'm based in Atlanta, and I've been coming to Houston for 5 or 6 years now, mainly because of this TMCX program and TMC building that we're sitting in now. And the thing that's really impressed me about Houston is really how they're able to pull all the different areas together. So the medical center, the academic side with the multiple universities, the investor side, as well as the actual medical device companies and startups. There's always been great turnout at these types of events like today, previous events with TMCX and J&J and CDI that really bring everyone together that I've rarely seen in other cities, right? So these events are really a great melting pot of getting all types of backgrounds and really helping create new devices, find new talent, and fund those devices as well. So that's really been the thing that stood out to me in Houston and why we continue to come back and sponsor events like this is really the mingling of different types of companies, investors, clinicians, things like that.
Just the conversations I've already had, I've been impressed with just the feel that I get from being here. So I'm excited to be here. So let's shift gears a little bit. And we had a report earlier that we put out at Greenlight Guru, the 2023 industry report benchmark study. One of the things that we found was one of the top objectives for management this year is compliance. And I wondered if that's something that is a focus of yours this year as well. And if so, how are you tackling that? Because one of the interesting things we noticed is 1 in 4 of the MedTech professionals did not feel competent in several key areas. So I'm curious how you're handling that in your companies. Any advice you have for companies? Maybe we'll start with Alex.
So we were talking a little bit before, like, I don't know if I would put that as one, personally. Now, part of the caveat for my answer is I have a Kyle and I have a Greenlight, so they don't pay me to say that, but that's why, for me, it feels like a mitigated thing at this point. And this is also my 3rd time doing it, so I've kind of almost figured it out. But, there's a lot of great services out there that can help de-risk that internally. So, I mean, we're focused on like product market fit, getting it, piloting with our commercial partner at this point. Quality and compliance manuals into that, but I guess that's not the thing that keeps me up at night.
What about you, Joanna?
Yeah, I think compliance certainly, I don't know about, like you said, number 1, but I think definitely a top 5, top 10 kind of concern or focus. For us, that has looked like implementing a quality system for the first time. So since we are kind of just coming out of that iterative innovation phase more into product development. This is, the first time we're having to build that system. And so there's been a lot of conversations about how do we do that intentionally, how do we build that into our company culture, not just the system, but the interest in compliance and why that leads to important outcomes, right? I think one other thing that we are thinking a lot about is about half the team has never really worked within a quality system. And so thinking about education and training kind of along the way is another focus of ours.
And you work for a lot of companies, with a lot of companies. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say similar to you as well, that, I think the reason that a lot of companies are worried about compliance, that is a major concern for them, is just the unknown, right? Things are changing very frequently with the updated EU regulations, the EU MDR, updated EU IVDR regulations, the potential merge with FDA and ISO later this year and into next year. So I think the biggest issue is there's ongoing changes. We also had Valentium speak about updated cybersecurity rules, so it feels like every day there's a new guidance, a new regulation, a new proposed regulation. So just trying to stay on top of that is a lot of work for us, and we're consultants, and that's our main job. So any company that has to do that on top of getting product out every day and doing everything else that's on their plate is a lot of work. So I think it's just a lot of work in general because there's a lot of unknown and a lot of updates being pushed to everybody.
Okay, that makes sense. Another thing we noticed was time to market. A lot of people are misjudging time to market. And as a former project manager, that was something I was acutely aware of. I'm curious how that impacts your company, what you do to mitigate those things, and what the impacts are when people misjudge time to market. Joanna, you're smiling, so I kind of want to start with you.
In terms of mitigation, I don't know, pray. I think, certainly I think some of those numbers are affected by all of, the pandemic, and there's kind of the aftershock of that as well continuing on. Certainly the regulatory bodies are overwhelmed and still struggling to, meet kind of the commitments of timelines they had kind of committed to. I think what it comes down to is, in terms of why we're seeing that discrepancy, is some of that stuff, but then also maybe entrepreneurial optimism. I think we all hope that we can get stuff done the first time perfectly every time, but we're talking about the human body, right? Not very predictable and very difficult to get it right the first time. And so I think it's just, to some extent, one, the nature of the people that come into this kind of early stage medtech innovation, wanting to get it right, hoping to get it right, and second, the nature of the business of anything that has to do with human biology.
So maybe a follow-up question then, if that is the case and you miss a deadline, what does that look like with a conversation with investors? I wonder if, maybe Alex, if you could speak to that.
Well, the point I was going to say was that, one, biology doesn't care about our timelines. It's generally going to do whatever it does, and that's why it's kind of an interesting space to be in, but it's hard to know what it's going to be. The other thing is, honestly, a lot of this mismatched expectations from investors. Because if I put on a slide that it's going to take me 18 months to do it, if I may know that's true, but that's going to bias them to think, oh, that's going to take too long, so I need to go to a company that has a lower regulatory risk. And so we've been biased to put more optimistic timelines on there, and then we're trying to meet these optimistic timelines, but biology doesn't care about that. And so I guess we have to do better as an entrepreneurship ecosystem to understand that, maybe things sometimes are going to take longer and have those baked in. I know when I'm evaluating a company for my firm, and someone shows me a slide that says it's going to take us 6 months or 12 months to get through it, I immediately know that they don't know what they're doing. And I'd rather someone show me a more realistic timeline and then explain to me why it's supposed to take as long as it does. Because if that investor has that mismatched mindset, when you then come to him and say, hey, things are over, because you might have not done anything wrong and still fail in their mind. And so that's why you need to have folks that can understand that process.
If I can add on to that, I think another thing is just making sure, and I know it's tough in this environment, and I tried as much as possible to do this with who participated in our round, is making sure they're somewhat patient capital, right? At least that they understand that this is a possibility, and timelines can extend. You may need to raise bridge rounds, especially kind of given the kind of financial climate right now around early stage investing. I think setting that expectation up front is really important. And then managing expectations along the way. I personally think it should never be a surprise to your board that you're behind. There should have been conversations along the way the whole time that you're a couple weeks behind, a month behind, and so I think it's also about having that transparency with the investors that do come, put their faith in you in addition to their money, right? And having that transparency to share kind of what's going on as far as even when it's bad news, sharing that openly as well.
Yeah, the 2 mitigations I can give you. 1, monthly investor updates are the most important thing to do as a CEO. Because then it's not a surprise, it just says, and you can see it coming. But 2, when you're initially selling those investors and what you're doing, if you can make the primary point about the mission and you get them to connect with what that mission is, and not necessarily the ROI for when that mission comes to fruition, then the incentivizations and things they're caring about are more in line with what should be your goals as a company.
That's great. No, I appreciate that. Kyle, did you have something you want to add?
I would say, a lot of times we see just a general knowledge gap, right? And I'm sure Greenlight sees this a lot as well with people that are new to the industry, and they say, oh, a 510K takes 90 days. That's what it says on the FDA's website. And we're like, well, there's also a built-in, if they have any questions, that's an additional 6 months, right? So the 90-day timeline is not really realistic for any company. So it's really just getting them level set on what the actual timelines are, and I think Greenlight provides a lot of content on what to expect when you're going through this different phase. And then, like Joanna said, the biology part and figuring out is hard, right? These aren't easy solutions. We work closely with the NIH on the RADx program trying to get COVID diagnostics to market, and we had all the money and all the experts, and they were still maybe 10%, 20% of the companies that actually made it through. So trying to solve the problems is also very hard. So just getting it to the point where your device works like it should is the start, and then all the regulatory timelines go into that as well. So also, this isn't easy. So.
Great points. I think education and being an educator makes a really good point. One point just kind of came to mind is if a company's raising money for a software as a medical device, perhaps they would be focusing on a VC that focuses on software, but there would need to be a lot of education around that. So just some interesting things there. We could probably go down a whole nother rabbit trail on VC, but let's go back a little bit to scaling manufacturing, because we talked a little bit about the compliance issues. Alex, you brought up other issues that you may be facing. I'm curious, what does keep you up at night? Maybe we can talk about some of those things.
The things that keep me up tonight, recently, is actually pretty new stuff for me, because we're about to launch with our first enterprise customer next month. And so I'm now worried about is our marketing campaign going to sign up patients fast enough that we can hit our revenue ramps like we like? I'm worried about do we have enough coverage in our back-end system such that if an engineer gets sick or something, we can cover for stuff. And really for me, it's just a matter of can we hire nurses effectively in order to maintain the growth that I have now sold to our investors, and making certain that we maintain our clinical effectiveness while we're doing that scaling and not running out of money all at the same time. It's part of the factor of how our device changed from a device that lives in your body, that lives in your toilet, that I'm not worried about biocompatibility stuff anymore. But now I have new problems, which are fun, and I recommend them.
Is there any advice, and maybe this is a question for all of you, that you would give yourself a year ago, knowing you're going this direction? Is there any advice that might be helpful for someone who may be just a few steps behind where you are in the process?
Anti-anxiety medication, probably. I think it is a really different environment, especially after the last quarter. We closed kind of right at the beginning of the end of last quarter, but our terms were set in March, and so we kind of got, we just kind of got in with founder-friendly terms. I think the biggest thing I would say I've learned is it's not a new learning, but raise as much as you can, right? Because I think the day you close is the day you start running out of money, which is maybe not the best way to think about it for anyone's mental health, but it's true. And so my focus has really been, basically within a month or two of closing and bringing on our great team, I'm already thinking about Series B, right? Even though we have a couple years of runway, it's all about who are we going to target, what are we going to have to raise, what are we going to have to prove in this round, and so I think it's realizing the lesson for me is you're never going to stop worrying about the future or the year a year from now, just because of kind of the nature of this. So.
You go. I got a little thing about.
I don't know necessarily a year ago. I think just in general on the manufacturing side, we work with a lot of companies that are going through manufacturing the first time, a lot of them using contract manufacturers. So, best advice we have is to really know the ins and outs of your product, because as you transfer it into manufacturing, there's going to be things that change, things that fail for unknown reasons. So really knowing your product down to the exact science of why everything goes into it and how to make it is really key for the manufacturing process, especially if you go to outsource that and problems start to pop up. That's that's the crux of manufacturing. I personally have done manufacturing, and I know with a lot of times startups don't have a ton of manufacturing experience, but it's a lot harder than you think to go from making them yourself at a 10 a day rate to making hundreds of thousands of millions, right? It's a lot harder than people think. And it's not just money that makes it go faster. There's a lot of other issues with validation, sourcing, suppliers, all of those activities. So,
I mean, so I kind of think of it in terms of like, you got to understand that there's a lot of things that can potentially go wrong in like the entire ecosystem that can affect you that has nothing to do with you. Like 3 months on the job, COVID happened. Starting to close out our seed round and Russia invades Ukraine, and my development, some of my people the company that we worked with to develop the assets we use on our website was a Ukrainian company. And like we lost contact with them around January, and we didn't know what to do. Eventually, we got a message, because they were a YC company, we got a message, hey guys, we're fine, we're in a bunker, we're ready to keep working. And so then they were able to keep working and generate our assets for it. Like, I've done this a while. I didn't have something in the playbook for what do we do in this instance. And my quote that I like is like the one from Lord of the Rings where Frodo's like asking Gandalf, like, you know, I always butcher it, something along the lines of like, men don't get to choose the times that they live in. They get to choose what they do with the time given. And so you just have to, as the CEO and the founder of your organization, just expect that bad stuff's going to happen, and just be willing to, as a team, deal with it, stay together, and you'll be fine.
That's great advice, and I like that illustration especially. So if I go back to the benchmark industry study, one of the things that we also noticed was there was the mindset of compliance over quality, and moving from compliance to quality. If we move from maybe the external venture capital and raising money, if we think more internally about how you're building your company, how do you instill that culture of quality? Is there anything you've done specifically to really focus your people and make sure that you are focused on quality, not just complying to regulations, but really delivering the best product for the end user? Joanna, do you want to start? Any
Sure,
thoughts?
yeah. I think, compliance is a checkbox, quality is a mindset, right? And I think those are two, while they are a lot of the same activities, it's two very different things. For us, like I said, half our team has never worked within a quality system, and so I think for us it's been, I've been working with our Director of Quality Assurance to think about how we can actively make sure that we build into some of these folks that have never done this before, that it's not a chore, it's not, you know, something that they have to do or a task that they have to check off, but something that is very crucial and important to the ultimate, safety and efficacy of our device, to the ultimate patient impact that we'll have. And so for us, at this early stage while we're building, it's going to look like a lot of education with a lot of treats like cookies and stuff like that. But education that's not necessarily, formal quality training, all that stuff, but even just, something we've talked about doing on our team is like Quality 101, just regularly kind of meeting to talk about how does all of this, link together? How does that ultimately impact the patient? Because it can be really overwhelming, and it can get really easy to just say, okay, I'm going to fill this out, and I'm going to fill this form out, or do this SOP, or whatever, rather than think about the actual impact and the purpose of it. So it's trying to build that in from the ground.
I was just thinking about it, and I think we as an organization kind of lucked into it because one of our co-founders is our director of quality. And because of that, since it was just the three of us, like QMS, the notion of quality being very critical, because one of the founders' role is quality, which is, I bet, a very unique thing, is I think one of our secret sauces to why, and it's part of our culture. And also, when we're recruiting people, it's one of the things that we select for is that people are willing to buy in and do the work that are required of a FDA-regulated medical device. And even like the people that we brought in that are, Sebastian, who was a CTO of an IoT company that made like tech-enabled scooters. He's an amazing engineer, never done FDA stuff before, but he's dove incredibly into it, and he's enthused about quality meetings, which to me is special. But you meet people like that, and I think, I think part of serendipity, part of intentionality, honestly, for us.
And I know you hire a lot of quality engineers. I'm sure. Is that something, or how do you sift for that? How does that look?
Yeah, I think, when we're hiring, we are trying to find people that have either worked in quality directly or touched quality and like that area and like how that impacts the actual outcome of the device. We also see a lot, and I'm sure Greenlight does as well, where startups or companies are trying to do more of the checkbox compliance activity, and we really need to dive into and educate them on to why we have to do it, how this form or report or risk analysis is really going to improve your product, prevent any future issues or recalls or adverse events or anything like that. So really doing the work early on, making sure they understand not just how to do the work, but why they're doing it and how it impacts their device down the road, because some of the stuff, it sounds unlikely, but it will happen. Once other people use a product, they're not trained, different environment, bad things are going to happen, the device is going to fail eventually. So planning for it and actually diving into this is really, the key. And we've shown that with companies that actually buy in and do the work properly and they're successful versus ones that try to make it more of a compliance checkbox and they end up fizzling out. Even with the good product and good investment, it still doesn't make it where they want it to be. So.
I recently read a book by a guy named Dan Purvis called 28 Days to Save the World. And if you want to know more about that book, just hang out because we'll be doing a live podcast with him in about 30 minutes, I think. What time is it, Kennedy? Okay, we're about to have some Q&A from you, the audience, and I'm expecting a question from Renee because she is right here. Anybody else who has a question, definitely ask it. One of the things from his book, though, that I want to kind of put to you all is principles versus rules. And I thought that was interesting. There was a certain chapter when he talked about a lot of times when we come up with a problem, we want to make a rule about it so that that problem will never happen again. But then they do something else that we want to make a rule about. And eventually your mature organization has so many rules, it becomes very slow. Are there certain principles that you kind of live by as an organization that you instill in your company that really help your organization move or stay agile? Are there any principles that drive you forward? And Joanna, do you want to start?
Sure, yeah, I think, 2 or 3. So we have 6 values. I won't go through all of them, but a couple of them to highlight. I think at our stage, communication is a very strong value in terms of having a lot of transparency, a lot of, can be meeting overload sometimes, but we're new as a team. We haven't quite totally figured out how to all work together. We're figuring it out along the way. And so almost over communicating and checking in a lot is kind of how that value has manifested for us. As well as, and this is something I'm working on, having really open and direct and honest conversations. Feedback has always been something I've struggled with, but with giving well. And so that's something that I'm kind of learning right now in terms of that, direct and transparent communication. So that's, just a principle, rather than saying, everybody has to have one-on-ones every week or something like that. It's kind of backing into it from the values rather than the other way. So, yeah.
Sounds like a good idea to have 6 values. I don't know if I would have them all. I don't know if I have them all, the top 6 off the top of my head. We probably should, but I know, one that we are it's kind of 2 things that we're very critical about is, intentionality and ownership. And so when we are giving something to someone, I am pretty much saying, look, we're going to trust you. It's up to you to fully understand this problem and all the different edge cases, and such that you can be the expert in whatever this thing that we're having you work on. And if you as a part of that, we're trusting them to make decisions and to make ownership of pieces of things. And we're trusting them to do enough of the background research and the ownership of it to be intentional about those decisions. So if there's an explanation of, well, what happened? Well, I thought X and Y. It turns out like Z happened because of that, which is fine. But because once you understand that, like the thought process, and then you can help guide it with the thing that you were trying to achieve with them. Because the scenario sounds like you were trying to over-specify the problem, when like probably the fundamental thing was just like the person didn't like fully understand why they were doing the thing they were doing, and so then you're trying to like over-specify and overbound your problem when maybe you just needed to put their chair somewhere else.
Kyle, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think key things for us that we really focus on is really a mindset of being proactive rather than reactive with quality systems and how we work with our clients. If we learn something in an audit that we might be able to translate to all of our clients, really let's make sure that that is communicated with everybody, update templates, update how we work, update activities. I think that's something that we've really tried to instill with Rook, is to make sure that quality is first, and there's ways that we can be proactive in improving how we work with our clients, as well as the quality system and output of our clients' product and quality system, and then just trying to be as efficient as we can. I think that's a lot of the reason why we partner so much with Greenlight, is really trying to improve efficiency of quality systems. It doesn't have to be 100-page quality manuals or excess documents you have to fill out for every little activity. It's really trying to review the regulations and do everything we can to make that efficient for the people actually doing the work. And that was a lot of stuff. When I was in manufacturing, having to initial things hundreds of times, is how do we make this more efficient for everyone? So those are our two main focus, I think, that apply in this scope.
You mentioned the 100-pound quality manual, and I just kind of want to dig a little deeper into what you said about an efficient quality management system, particularly around the SOPs. I don't want to get too technical, I guess, but I was talking to somebody in Minneapolis a few months ago who said that his quality manual, he made into a trifold. The FDA inspector came in and looked at it and said, seriously? And he read it, and then he said, you know what the FDA inspector said? Finally, so someone gets it. The regulations are intentionally vague. They can be intentionally vague, and a lot of times we look into it too deeply, and we want to get too specific for our company. But I'm curious if you can speak to that. I don't want to get out of my depth here.
No, I mean, I think it's the same approach. Is really, we took the perspective of looking at the regulations and how do we tailor this for a startup company, right? That has 5 employees or 10 employees, and we don't have the giant quality system of a Medtronic or an Abbott that has as many people as they have in R&D working in quality, right? You don't have that luxury when you're a startup. So really, the same idea. I think our quality manual is 2 or 3 pages, and auditors read it. Oh, this is great. It's efficient, and able to move through the next thing. So it's really just taking the regulations, looking at them, of what does it say you have to do. The nice to haves are good and might fit for some companies, but there's a lot of times where it isn't needed for you. So, and the FDA, if you put it in your procedure that you have to do it, they'll hold you to that over what's in the QSR, right? So if you add it in your procedure, then you have to do that as well. So really sticking to the regulations, keeping it efficient, and then looking at it proactively to say, how can we make this more efficient or more compliant?
Yeah, and don't think less of his 2 to 3 page quality manual. The other guy didn't tell me how small his font size was, so I'm not sure. One question I'd like to ask you all is, okay, going back to 2023, if you look back on 2023 from 2024, what would you, if you could finish the sentence, in order to be successful in 2023, my team is going to have to be what? How would you finish that sentence? And Alex, I've picked on Joanna enough. I'm going to make you go first.
We have to be together, because we have a pretty complex system. We have hardware, we have software, we have a clinical organization, we have our customers. We're also trying to grow, and we're also trying to move fast. We're trying to move safely, but you can't predict everything. And so, honestly, just before I came here, there was something that came up that we had to huddle together and fix, and we did it together. So that, and maybe agility to do it together, but that's pretty much the word I would use.
What about you, Joanna?
Yeah, I think mine is actually maybe a little bit weird. I would say vulnerable. I think, most of the people at Prana are, with the exception of one very experienced person are doing this role, the role that they're in for the first time. And so, our investors and our team kind of bet on a lot of folks' potential, and that's kind of what you have to do in a startup a lot of the time, because you can't always have like every single person be experienced, right? And I think the reason I say vulnerable is I think our success depends on people being comfortable asking for help, people being comfortable being transparent with each other, and I think that all of that kind of communication and collaboration is really key to whether or not we succeed as a company.
And Kyle, you're super close to the regulations. What about your company? How has that?
Yeah, I mean, I think ours is just willing to communicate, similar to what Joanna said about a main focus of theirs. As our team continues to grow with additional consultants and branches on 3 continents and clients around the world, is really just being able to support the Rook team and support our clients efficiently and make sure we're all being able to communicate, ask for help, share knowledge. I think that's our main focus going through this year as we continue to grow.
I am a curious person. I could ask you all questions all day. In fact, I think I want you on a podcast, both of you, at some point. I've had Kyle on the podcast, Well, what about questions from our audience? What questions do you have? Anything? I won't pick on you, Renee. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah. So my question's for Joanna. You said you have a team that they've never really done this before. Did your idea come from an institution, and how did you build your team?
Yeah. So. The original technology came from our clinical co-founders out on the West Coast. So at the time, they actually weren't members of institutions any longer, but it certainly came out of clinical practice and their experience with clinical practice. And then we had a unique situation where it was incubated by J&J and seeded by J&J at the Center for Device Innovation. We spun it out of J&J with their NUCO team. And so, sorry, the second part of your question was about how did I pick the team? Our first hire was super experienced, decades of experience. He's standing right over there at the back. So I shouldn't say the whole team is not inexperienced. Ken certainly, brought. This is, I believe, his 9th startup. So we're in good hands. It's not like, it's not just chaos or anything like that. But in terms of picking the team, it was a lot of getting to know folks in the ecosystem. So for the most part, except for I believe one job, all of our positions were filled by people one of us had already closely worked with in some capacity. So filled by network as opposed to doing a job posting and doing a search. I think that is incredibly necessary when it's an early stage startup, right? Any single employee is a huge investment and could be a risk or could be a reward. And so for us, that was the approach we took, as we turned to our network and hired people that we already knew or people that worked with people that we knew. And so that's kind of how we chose our team. And we did bet on folks that may have not had that exact experience, but we saw the potential for them to grow into it. And we're seeing that happen with a lot of our team right now.
Yeah, Juan.
I'm surprised you remember my name. I know Wall Street's talking about right now this high interest rate environment coming up, tighter credit markets. How do you three feel that the industry is kind of preparing itself? Or are you shielded because you're in the medical industry, you really aren't affected by that? Are you bracing yourself for leaner times right now? So how are you seeing it?
Yeah, I had, so we're thinking about our Series A and having those early conversations and talking with some of our investors, and I kind of gave them like a sort of, this is how we're sort of pitching the mission, how we're trying to grow, and I had kind of the normal this is the, we're big aspirations, we're gonna like revolutionize and blah, 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 blah. And he was like, okay, let's stop, like that's normally nice, but the market's down 50%. We may not be able to make LP calls, and so we need to that kind of stuff isn't really important to us right now. We need to be seeing is this actually going to be viable? Is it going to live or die on? So at this point, we're gearing up for Series A, but we're But to hedge it, we're trying to make path to profitability for us at this point. And because everything I hear is it's just going to get worse. That next year, the environment will be either post-recession, maybe not, but if you're going to raise, probably you do want to do it in 2023 versus 2024. So that's going to be fine, don't worry about it.
To add to that, so at least how I've been thinking about it is, it probably will be tougher. It probably will be leaner the next time we raise. At least we have to anticipate that. I think the one thing, so life sciences certainly took a hit towards the end of last year. But the interesting thing was, and I think I got this from an SVB report, devices actually stayed relatively steady and tend to stay, it's not as much of a nosedive. So even if there was kind of a dip, it's not a nosedive like some of the other subsectors kind of see. So it's not been as terrible, I think, in the device sector. And at least what I'm hearing is that M&A will look relatively the same in our space. How that affects, though, early stage investing, I think that's the bigger question, right? So we certainly are preparing for leaner times, and we can't get to revenue anytime soon, but we are very actively applying for non-dilutive funding, doing competitions, doing kind of all of the alternate funding kind of approaches beyond just raising.
Yeah, not really my expertise. I think when we work with startups, we kind of recommend, like Alex, that if they have a path to get to market and start getting some revenue, that they take that. And also, just generally that the path of getting acquired might not always work out like you want. Even if you have a strategic partner, there still might be changes that affect that down the road. So always planning that you are going to have to take your device through clearance or to the market and then start to generate some revenue, and then that might change whether you get acquired at that point. So I think that's advice we've given out over the past 10 years as things ebb and flow, but I think that's kind of our line. We're not necessarily advisors or investors, but.
I will say there was the one good piece of news that I heard, what we've been kind of hearing from our YC back channels, is that deals will still get done because there's a lot of dry powder out there. But only about 50% of companies will probably get those deals. So some of the deals may look just as normal, but you're just going to see them much less. And so the key is, be the 50 that makes it, and just don't suck. You'll probably be okay. That's my advice.
Don't rely on the incompetence of your peers, right? Any other questions out there? Yes.
I have a question, and probably this is for you, Kyle. So I've transitioned from medical device at BD, where we're doing IV catheters and port access needles, towards a medical software as a medical device company. And the one thing I'm noticing is that there's a gap in the regulation, especially when you look at the 21 CFR 820 and the ISO 13485 2016 as written. What if you're software as a medical device company? What can you use to kind of cover that gap? Like anticipate what's going to be the next regulation that is inclusive?
Yeah, I think that is definitely a good question, and there's a lot of unknown on that side as well, right? So even though ISO was published in 2016, the most recent version, it still doesn't cover a lot on software, and they leverage a lot from 62304, and that standard's not super up to date either. So I think really looking at guidances, whether that's FDA guidances or EU guidances that leverage what best practices are for software devices, I think is things that we work on. There's also the Agile regulations for medical device, the TIR 45, that's helpful as kind of setting up a foundation for your quality system for a SAMD product. And then I think, just working with partners are good as well. We do a lot with startups. I know Greenlight does as well, SAMD products. So potentially having some additional support on that side to make sure things are set up properly with your quality system specifically for SAMD. So a lot of these things don't apply, but there's also some areas of the regulation that might apply and you might not think of them. I think customer property is one that has caught some people off guard, whereas auditors will think of PHI as customer property in certain SAMD products. And so a lot of times you would think, we're not ever going to physically have customer property, but that PHI could be an example of customer property, and you would need to account for that in your quality system. So really having a person review that as an expert, and then leveraging some of these standards as well.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Real quick, ESG, right? So we were in a conference a couple months ago. In terms of quality, like, do you see ESG in terms of environmental stuff specifically kind of creeping into the medtech space? You know, I know in general, I feel like, you know, big hospitals like disposables and throw stuff away, and reusables really aren't very efficient for hospitals. But do you see ESG getting integrated into the regulatory space?
Yeah, I think it's definitely something we have accounted for in kind of that design scope as how it will be disposed, especially if you have like disposable batteries and things like that that are single use, is the impact of disposal on these things and having certain design requirements tied to that. Whether or not that'll tie into the regulatory requirements, I think is unknown. I don't think there's a big push for that currently, but I know that certain states also have their own regulations around that. So I think it's definitely like a case-by-case basis on how that would affect your specific product and what you need to do to ensure you're meeting those regulations.
Like things like sterilization.
Yeah, that's also, and you know, the environmental impact of that is also big, but there's not another great solution currently. So it's like there's also a big unknown on that as well.
Really good question so far. Any other questions that someone might have? Okay. Let's go ahead and take 5. I'll give you a little quick, first let's give a round of applause. Thank you so much for our panel.